My people had prayers but no weapons left. We begged the stars for mercy, and it saved us anyway.
My name is Queen Ishara Vex. For 300 years my people, the Carthesi, have maintained a peace doctrine so absolute that we outlawed weapons altogether. We believed in negotiation, in understanding, in the fundamental goodness of the universe's species. We believed in this right up until the Void Collective showed up with 17 warships and zero interest in our philosophies. The prayer came first at sunset, with 10,000 of my soldiers lined up in armor they'd never used because we'd never needed to. The armor was ceremonial. The spears were ornamental. The Void Collective had plasma cannons and nothing remotely resembling mercy. We had 48 hours before the bombardment would begin. The prayer was broadcast across every frequency we had, sent out into the stars in the hope that someone, anyone, would hear the Carthesi crying out for salvation. I stood before my assembled armies, all the soldiers we had, all the force we'd ever managed to raise in peacetime, and I asked the universe for help. I was not afraid. Fear is what happens when you don't expect a solution. I simply had faith that a solution existed. Then the scanner operators started screaming. Not in terror, in confusion. A ship had entered the system, moving fast enough to break 3 different laws of physics we thought were absolute. It wasn't collective. It was registered as Earth-flagged, and when it identified itself, the name made no sense. USS Predator. The human commander, a woman named Captain Valencia Cross, brown skin weathered by 1,000 decisions, eyes that had seen things I'd never comprehend, arrived with exactly 700 soldiers and an attitude that suggested she already knew she was outnumbered. She didn't ask for a briefing. She asked for weapon systems. "You've got anti-orbital defense net?" she asked, studying our tactical displays like they were a menu and she was deciding what to order. "Non-functional," I admitted. "We have never needed." "Yeah, I'm getting that," she said. "Okay, here's what happens. You tell me everything about your defensive infrastructure. I tell my team how to make it work with weapon systems you apparently got but never used. We stop these bastards, and then everyone gets to go home and question their life choices. You understand," I said, "that you are outnumbered approximately 1,000 to 1 by the collective?" She looked at me with something that might have been pity. "Ma'am," she said, "you're looking at this wrong. They are outnumbered. They just don't know it yet." What followed was 36 hours of the most efficient, organized chaos I'd ever witnessed. Captain Cross moved through my military installations like she was conducting a symphony, and her people, 700 humans, armed with whatever weapons they'd brought and whatever we could jury-rig into operational condition, began converting Carthesi defensive infrastructure into something that could actually defend. She stood beside me in the command center as the Void Collective warships entered the system. Her hand was on my shoulder, a gesture of camaraderie I was beginning to understand meant something different to humans than it did to my people. "They're going to regret this," she said. "You are extremely confident," I said, "for someone facing 17 warships." "I've fought worse," she said. "What you're seeing is just bad luck on their part. They picked the one species in this sector dumb enough to answer a distress call in person. The first volley came in at 0600 hours. Our reactivated defense grid took down 3 ships before the collective even understood what had happened. The other 14 split formation, confused by the response from a species they'd been assured had no functional weapon systems. Captain Cross was laughing. Actual laughing. "They brought 17 ships to crush a peaceful species," she said. "They were not prepared for the friendly death world show up and ask if they wanted to die today." The battle lasted 6 hours. By the end, 9 Void Collective ships had retreated, and the remaining 8 had decided that attacking a planet defended by humans and their suddenly operational weapon systems was a tactical miscalculation of historic proportions. When the smoke cleared, Captain Cross turned to me and said, "You're going to want to have a serious conversation with your neighbors about defense policy." 3 months later, the first human military attaché arrived on Car-That's to help us establish a proper defense structure. A research team landed with technical manuals. A diplomatic delegation followed with trade agreements. And Captain Valencia Cross requested permanent assignment as military advisor, which I accepted by making her something she'd never been before, a person my people had chosen to keep, rather than negotiate away. You know, she said, sitting in my war room, studying the maps of our star sector, you had the right idea about faith. You just had faith in the wrong thing. What do you mean? I asked. You were begging the stars for mercy, she said. What you should have been asking for was Death World humans with more firepower than sense and a habit of showing up when people need saving. I laughed. Something I'd never done before humans arrived on my world. Felt right. The Void Collective underestimated us, I said. They sure did, Cross agreed. They thought you were peaceful. They didn't account for the fact that peaceful people who stand their ground are the scariest thing in the galaxy. We just provided the weapons. My prayer had been answered. Not by the mercy of the stars, but by the arrival of a species whose definition of mercy meant showing up with enough weapons to make sure you never needed to beg again.